All right, thank you, Ariana. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Brian Mendez. I'm from University of California at Berkeley, and it was my pleasure to work with Matthew this summer, and we were doing a project to do follow-up observations of exoplanets. And this is a passion of Matthew's, he's a high school student in New York State, and he came in wanting to, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. So I was basically trying to just get out of his way and give him as much support as I could. So I look forward to you all getting to experience his presentation.
All right, give me a second. I'm going to share it quickly. All right. All right. So my name is Matthew, as he said. This year we were studying exoplanets, just kind of a bunch of JPEG images, I guess. So basically some background information on what the exoplanet is, because it's a pretty new study considering it was only started around 20 years ago after they found the first two exoplanets around a neutron or a pulsar or neutron star. Yeah. A transit, the way that we observed it was basically imagine a basketball and then like a tennis ball orbiting or moving around the basketball, and then a person would be standing far away. As the tennis ball moves in front of the basketball, it creates a shadow which blocks out the star's light, which is the exoplanet moving in front of the star. And we observed several of those throughout the course of this internship. So the way that they're named, which is kind of weird, is they're named after the star that already exists, followed by the letter B and then C onward if they discover a second one or so on. So like if an alien, for whatever reason, used our own naming system, they would say, and if they found like Venus first, it would be Sun B. And then if they found the Earth second, it would be Sun C, and so on and so forth and blah, blah, blah. Because of the fact that these exoplanets don't actually give off light, it's extremely hard to see them because they're so small compared to their star, and we only get to see like the shadow or some reflected light from like the back end of the orbit. Most of these exoplanets are extremely far away. Like the closest star to us has two, as well as the double star system also has one each, but they're still 4 light years away. So imagine 1 light year being 5 trillion miles away, times that by 4, and that's our closest exoplanet. So like I said before, the goal was to observe these exoplanets and then submit them to an organization called the American Association of Variable Star Observers, or the AAVSO. The reason we're doing it is to help gather more information on these exoplanets and further our understanding of them. So their parameters would be stuff like orbital period, how big they actually are, which would depend on like the curve and stuff like that, the distance from the star, and other factors like that. You wouldn't really get to see temperatures. So like more information about the work I did. Basically, we would use the telescope GORT, which is down here. Hold on. My screen share thing is being weird. We used the telescope GORT, which is down here, to look at the stars, which we would take about 70, or Dr. Mendez would schedule them on a website, and then it would take about 70 to 200 pictures per transit. And then another program that we would do called Exotic, which is run by NASA to run the data from like telescopes and other things like that, would look and create a model to find a light curve, which is the graph that shows the planet passing in front of its star, which I'll show pictures of later. And all of the planets that we looked at are what's known as hot Jupiters. So planets like Jupiter, but are 3,000 degrees or more Fahrenheit, depends on how close they are to their star. They have winds that go between 1,400 to 14,000 miles per hour. And then they have extreme weather too. So that's something to keep in mind. And then also there's a reference to the robot. I didn't see the show, but I added it just because that's what they named the telescope after. So basically how it runs the data, and I'll show pictures on the next slide, but you put in, it'll show a graph of the first image that the telescope took, and then you would look for the coordinates of the target star. And then you would take coordinates of 2 other stars nearby and then compare the light to it. So because of the fact that the star with the exoplanet is a variable star, meaning that the light can differ, that the two stars that do not differ would show the difference between them. And then the program compares it using math and things like that. It uses image files called FITS, or the flexible image transport system. So you can increase or decrease the brightness of it to try and pick out certain stars if it's like too noisy or there's too much saturation, then you can use that to try and get rid of some of it. And then it'll run for about 15 minutes to 30, depending on how many images are there and if it's a longer transit. And it'll look through every single image of the star, and the program's very picky too. It doesn't like certain things. So like if one image doesn't have the star in it, it just won't even show the data at all. But here's the image of the graph. And then here was an image of a planet called WASP-2b, which we looked at I think pretty early on in our internship. So this was sort of one of the pictures of the program not wanting to cooperate. Yeah, and also I accidentally named it wrong, I think. I don't remember. So here are some more things that can go wrong. So the technology can be extremely sensitive, like I mentioned, with how the data doesn't want to like to load sometimes. We've also had problem with bad weather where we were trying to hunt a specific exoplanet like all summer, and every single time it was either the pointing was wrong, there was too much fog or rain and it closed up, or it just didn't even want to schedule it at all. And that's kind of sort of the whole thing with exoplanet hunting, is that it can take a while, but the results are worth it in the end. So here's a transit that when we ran it twice, it somehow cut off half of the transit. So it still showed the full thing, but it had to do it through two different runs. And then another planet that we tried to look at called WASP-48b didn't even have the coordinates for the telescope, which all of the other ones did. I still don't know why it's doing that. So if it does work out, we get a lot of transits that they kind of, each one looks kind of the same, but it all depends. But, or I should say, all the light curves kind of look the same in the graph, but if you were to actually visit the planets, each one would be a completely different world, like very much different from the ones that we have in our own solar system. So here are some examples. Here's WASP-2b, WASP-3b, EXO-7b, and then HAP-P23. Most of these, we had 7 successful transits, and then I actually just looked at 2 more yesterday, and we got another successful transit from WASP-3b again. But we looked at 19 transits in total, and some of them, it's been a fun ride though so far. So basically for the future, I still am fully planning on working with Dr. Mendez on this. This has always been something that I've been extremely enthusiastic about ever since I was 8, I want to say. I've been studying them for as long as I can remember. We're going to be looking for exoplanets that would be around constellations that you normally wouldn't see during the summer. So how you have like Delphinus, which is the dolphin, or other constellations in that area. Constellations like Orion aren't out during the summer, but are out during the winter, which also show different planets. The other thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be a volunteer for the Zooniverse project, which is volunteers helping to sort through data from the Transital Exoplanet Survey satellite, which looks at a bunch of transits from different parts of the sky and look for planets. And these volunteers have already found over 100 planetary systems, some of which have multiple planets in them. There have been a lot of roadblocks, I'm not going to lie, with exotic and stuff like that because of just the telescope and other problems that we can't really control. But I'm also going to be working as part of like the Exoplanet Watch team, trying to actually do these beta testing things for GORT, because some of these interns will probably be using GORT next year, and because of how many problems that we've been having right now, we could be using the exoplanet thing, or we could be using it to schedule exoplanet transits throughout the year, because we've had so many problems with ours. So the more that we get the problems fixed, the less problems that they would have for like next year and stuff like that. But that's all. So questions, I guess? I don't know. That's all.
Thanks, Matthew. That was a great presentation. And anyone who was here during showcase number 1 might remember our other 2 interns who used GORT also had a lot of data collection issues, but you all managed to get something usable in the end. So that's what matters. Any questions for Matthew?
And we definitely appreciate your persistence sticking with GORT because we're getting it to work better and better all the time.
I see one question here from Mia, Ankita's mentor. What are your thoughts on the new JWST observations of water vapor and CO2 in hot Jupiter atmospheres?
It was kind of crazy to think about because some of these planets, like we don't really know what's in their atmospheres because they're so far away and extremely hard to see. But like, it's kind of crazy that a telescope would be able to pick out and kind of clearly see the traces of like water vapor and not being able to find things like carbon dioxide and methane and other gases that you normally find on other planets like Uranus or Neptune. So, you know.